And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. 2 years ago Saturday, the state of Georgia executed Troy Anthony Davis. The execution took place despite major doubts about evidence used to convict Davis of killing police officer Mark McPhail, including the recantation of 7 of the 9 non-police witnesses. As the world watched to see whether Davis's final appeal for a stay of execution would be granted by the U.S. Supreme Court, Democracy Now! Was the only news outlet to continuously broadcast live from the prison grounds in Jackson, Georgia. During our 6-hour special report, we spoke with Davis's supporters and family members who held an all-day vigil, then heard from those who witnessed his death by lethal injection at 11:08 p.m. Eastern Time. Soon we'll be joined by some of the people who were there that night. His sister, Kimberly, the NAACP's Ben Jealous, and Jen Marlowe, who has authored the book I Am Troy Davis. But first, I want to turn to someone who can't be with us today, Troy's oldest sister, Martina Davis Correa. She died in December of 2011 after a decade-long battle with breast cancer. She was 44 years old. This is Martina speaking 2 years ago, hours before her brother was executed.
So I want to stand with my family and say that our lives and my sons and my sisters and brothers' lives and my niece's life has been richer for knowing Troy. Anybody who's met Troy has come away with an imprint of him on their soul. I don't have to tell people what my brother's like, because once they get to meet him, they can see for themselves. And that's why they try to keep him voiceless in the press, because they don't want you to know who Troy Davis is, because then you couldn't stand by and allow the state to kill in your name. So I just would like to say that I am Troy Davis. Say that, you know, I've been battling cancer for 10 years, and I don't have cancer, but I'm reaping some of the effects of the medicine. Several months ago, I was doing fine, and after that, I couldn't get up out of the chair. But I'm here to tell you that I'm going to stand here for my brother today. Mama. Let's show Georgia that we will not stand by and we will defy them, and we need to start with that gold dome. Thank you.
That was Martina Correa standing up in her wheelchair, the older sister of Troy Davis, his most vocal and steadfast advocate. As the scheduled time of Troy Davis's execution approached, it was September 21st, 2011, hundreds of his supporters rallied outside the death row prison in Jackson, Georgia. Around 7 p.m., the crowd erupted into thunderous cheers. For a moment, it appeared the Supreme Court had stayed the execution for a 4th time. What did Troy tell you the last time you saw him?
The last time it's part of the reasons.
We're hearing some kind of cheer that has gone up. But the jubilation was short-lived. After realizing that the execution had just been delayed, not stayed, supporters of Troy Davis waited for news from the Supreme Court. Just before 11, about 11:15 at night, the crowd went silent when it was learned the High Court would not stop the execution. Prison officials began the lethal injection process minutes later at about 10:53. Troy Davis was pronounced dead shortly thereafter.
Court-ordered execution of Troy Anthony Davis has been carried out. The time of death is 11:08 p.m.
I'm standing with
Wesley Boyd, and I'd like to say there's been a travesty of justice, and I'd like to tell America ought to be ashamed of itself, and God help America. And if you're alive in America, please don't come to Georgia. Don't come to Georgia. Don't buy any Georgia pecans. Don't buy any Georgia peaches. Don't buy any trade with Georgia. The whole world. Don't buy anything with Georgia. God bless America, and God bless Troy Davis.
Minutes after the state of Georgia executed Troy Davis, a group of reporters who witnessed the execution walked out of the death chamber and onto the prison grounds. They described Troy Davis's final moments. John Lewis is a radio journalist at WSB.
Basically, it went very quietly. The McPhail family and friends sat in the first row. Warden read the order, asked if Troy Davis had anything to say, and Davis lifted his head up, looked at that first row, and made a statement in which he said he wanted to talk to the McPhail family and said that despite the situation you're in, he was not the one who did it. He said that he was not personally responsible for what happened that night, that he did not have a gun. He said to the family that he was sorry for their loss, but also said that he did not take their son, father, brother. He said to them to dig deeper into this case, to find out the truth. He asked his family and friends to keep praying, to keep working, and keep the faith. And then he said to the prison staff, the ones he said who are going to take my life, he said to them, may God have mercy on your souls. And his last words were to them, may God bless your souls. Then he put his head back down, the procedure began, and about 15 minutes later it was over.
As Troy Davis's death was announced, I turned to Ben Jealous, who was standing with the family of Troy Davis in the protest pen. Ben Jealous, the president of the NAACP.
You know, my heart goes out. It goes out to the McPhail family. We're surrounded by the Davis family. All of our hearts are broken. I've known his nephew since his nephew was 3 years old. But right now, it goes out to the guards. You know, there was a moment the other day when my staff was in there and the family was in there, and the guard leaned over to Martina and asked her to hold it together because he said, we're just barely holding it together. He said, my mom's been praying for you guys for days, and there was a sense that if she started crying, the guards would start crying. And we have to remember that these are men, these are working class men and women, you know, in a rural area looking for a good paying job to support their family. And this shouldn't be part of it. They know they may have to execute somebody, but having to execute somebody in the midst of so much doubt. When the former warden used to be the boss here saying, stay the execution. The former head of the FBI saying, stay the execution. Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals, all saying, stay the execution. It's absolutely inhumane. It's not just a crime against Troy Davis. It's a crime against our democracy. It's a crime against those specific men and women who are called to hold down his left leg or his right leg amidst so much doubt when even their old boss is saying, stop this, don't do it.
Some of the voices from Democracy Now!'s special broadcast, September 21st, 2011, 2 years ago, when Troy Anthony Davis was executed by the state of Georgia. You can go to our website to see much more of our coverage of the case of Troy Davis, as well as the full 6-hour broadcast and an interactive video timeline. When we come back, we'll be joined by the 3 people who were there that night who continue to fight to abolish the death penalty today. We'll be joined by Ben Jealous, now the outgoing president of the NAACP, Kim Davis, the sister of Troy Davis, and Jen Marlowe, who's written a book about Troy Davis called I Am Troy Davis. Stay with us.
Without Troy, I can't.